Hello again, and welcome to another in our preparation for partnership classes. This is the third of our series of 4 classes that focus on the structure of music, and as well as being part of our general preparation for partnership class in Collegiate Shag, these classes are suitable for anybody in any swing dance tradition who wants to understand a bit more of the music. This means that while we have some dancing parts in here as well as listening ones, I will be dancing basic Collegiate Shag steps, nothing fancy because actually I want people to be concentrating on the music. If you come from a different dance tradition, you're a Lindy Hopper or a West Coast swinger or whatever it is, by all means just dance your kind of basic dance steps, because the main exercise here is to listen to the musical structures and to learn to understand them and learn to predict what's happening. Okay, before we actually do any of that, let me put some music on and we'll just have a warm-up. So again, just use the music to dance what you already know in whatever dance style you want to dance.
A trickster tripped when he hopped. He should have flipped when he flopped. He wasn't hip to the proper jive when he made his dive. He should have flipped when he flopped before he chipped off his block. The dizzy drip made a drop through space. Then he lost his face. Now the fall didn't hurt him when he flew his top, but a small little matter like a sudden stop when he flipped his lid, slipped and slid. Whack! Oh, his aching back. The things he said no one knows, but he's afraid to report. 'Cause from his head to his toes he's whipped. Should have flipped when he flopped.
So hopefully you're warmed up. That was, as you noticed, basic music with quite a lot of structure in it. The musicians have given dancers a lot to play with. It's probably been around about 3 years since I've heard that piece of music. It's certainly not fresh in my memory. Yet generally, I knew exactly when the musicians are going to do something interesting, precisely because of the rules that I'm about to tell you in the rest of this session. As before, I think it's quite helpful to show you the rules visually as well as by playing you music and helping you dance with them. So I'm going to move to voiceover slides mode for a few minutes so that I can show you the structures as a kind of visualization on a screen, and then we'll come back to dancing. For the last 2 classes, we were focusing on 12-bar music, and I symbolized in the first of those classes the internal anatomy of a 12-bar chorus like this, where each of these small boxes is a 4-beat bar, and they're clicked together to form these 8-beat units, and I drew them in 3 rows of 2 eights together in a row like this, because conceptually the melody, or certainly the lyrics, follow this pattern, where you have, for example, I woke up this morning with an aching head, and a bit of music playing, repeating that phrase, and then some other phrase at the end. In our ballad form, we only have 4, not 6, of these 8-count units. So in other words, we have 8 bars, or 4 eights. And here I've drawn them one underneath the other, because the lines of the lyric normally only last 8 beats before the concept changes, rather than lasting these 2 eights before the concept changes. I should say that there's much less internal structure here. Here I was able to give you a lot of rules about chord changes and things, which is useful to spot when you're in this. Here there are far fewer internal rules, but we can still spot this fairly quickly. Let me play examples. I'm going to play a 12 bar again so that you can hear how long these phrases last. And then I'm going to play you an 8 bar and you'll hear how quickly you move from one lyrical phrase to the next. And as soon as you hear that change, you realise you can't be here, you must be in the ballad form. Let me play these 2 examples. So this is 12 bar. We're about to start here.
Come and see me, baby. Please don't come too soon.
And this is just accompaniment filling up this second 8.
Come
We've
and
got
see
to hear
me,
before the
baby,
lyrics start again.
but please don't come too soon. We got a date at 8, and it's only afternoon.
Okay, so that was 12 bar. It's a piece you've heard before. It's a structure you've heard before. This is obeying the rules that we've had of the last 2 weeks. Now I'm going to play a piece which has got this structure. So listen out for this effect of having a line that's only lasting 8 beats and then something new starting 8 beats later.
Orini, Magruti, Vout, Orini, Magruti, Vout, Orini, Magruti.
Good. So presumably you heard that. Even though this is a lyric that repeats, because sometimes people do repeat. The Vauterini was what was said in the beginning of this, of all 3 of these. You heard that it started again every 8, not every 16 as over here. So that was telling you really quickly that you're in this form. And then, of course, you didn't hear the kind of chord change here that you'd expect here. Again, that just helps settle you that you know where you are. Now, I said that within the structure of one of these verses there is more freedom, but there is a very rigid, or pretty rigid anyway, overarching structure that lasts 4 entire verses long, and that gives this whole ballad form its other term of 32 bar, because if you count these little smaller rectangles, there are 32 of them here. And the structure has one type of verse, which we'll call A, a repeat of that type of verse. If it's words and things, it may have changed, or the decoration of the music may have changed, but the tune is basically the same. Then a B, which is going to be clearly different, and then an A again. And that complete unit is the refrain. So it's a long thing. There may only be 2 of these in a whole piece of music. Older jazz musicians would call that a chorus, but unfortunately modern usage has muddied that up. So I'm going to use the word refrain, because people now use the word chorus in too many different ways, depending on what musical tradition they come from. As dancers, we're interested in this because we would often be doing one kind of dancing in this. We may repeat the same pattern of steps here because the music's repeating, do something really different here, and then go back to our original pattern here. I'll play a piece so that you can practice recognising this, and to highlight these changes, I'm going to introduce a teaching assistant, Katie's friend Hamish. Hamish has a favourite song, which is Rubber Ducky from Sesame Street, and he appears in Katie's arms when a verse begins with the word rubber ducky, but he disappears and isn't in her arms when the verse doesn't begin rubber ducky, sadly. So because this song does often have verses that include rubber ducky, Hamish will help you spot the AABA structure, and of course he will need Katie's help for this. So here's Katie, waiting for the music to begin.
Rubber ducky, you're the one. You make that time so much fun. Rubber ducky, I'm awfully fond of you.
We're going to expect the same thing because this will be the second A.
Rubber ducky, joy of joys. When I squeeze you, you make noise. Rubber ducky, you're my very best
But you're
friend.
expecting
It's
the
true.
B to come up now.
Every day when I make my way to the tubby, I meet a fella who's cute and yellow and chubby.
You're expecting the A to return.
Ba-ba-ba-ba. Rubber ducky, you're so fine. I'm so lucky that you're mine. Rubber ducky, I'm awfully fond of you.
Okay, so hopefully Hamish and Katie together helped you spot this AAB structure. Let's get back to dancing for a bit. The lyrics of our warm-up piece were dominated by jive, the sort of street language of the swing dance community, particularly around Harlem. And that was actually written down in a dictionary, the Hipsters Dictionary, by Cab Calloway. Cab Calloway is singing this next piece that I'll play, and the idea this has a good AABA structure. And what we're going to do to it is dance one kind of thing to the A's and another kind of thing to the B's. So, for example, if you're a Lindy Hopper, you may want to do triple time stuff to the A's and Charleston time stuff to the B's. For shag, you could just make a difference between doing, for example, double flick stuff and single, or you could, for example, choose to do all of your stuff, all of your flicks and things in front of you in the A's and behind you in the B's, or you could do any of the flicky stuff in the A's, but in the B's, do the sort of swoopy or jazz step stuff. For now, it doesn't really matter whether music is screaming swoop or jazz step. The thing that I want you to hear is the A repeating itself, something different for the B's, and don't worry too much about whether the different thing you've chosen is a brilliant fit to the music. That we can work on later. The idea is just to get this very basic A's are one thing, B's are another thing sort of change. As in all of these exercises, I'm not trying to lay down a law that says whenever you hear an A and B change, you must change your dancing in such and such a way. That's not the idea. The idea is to make you conscious of the changes by doing something physical that will help you spot them and will help you internalize them. Then the dance becomes your own and you can choose what to do when you know they're coming. It's something you'll understand, it's something you'll know, it's something that's your choice. So I'm not dictating what you should do, but as a practice, so that you know you've got the hang of spotting it and responding to it, let's make it as crude as one kind of dancing to the A's, one kind to the B's. Here goes. This will make you hungry.
Have a banana, Anna. Try the salami, Tommy. Give it the gravy, Davy. Everybody eats when they come to my house. Try a tomato, please too. Here's cacciatore, Dory. Taste the bologna, Tony. Everybody eats when they come to my house. I fix your favorite dishes, hoping this good food fills ya. Work my hands to the bone in the kitchen alone. You better eat if it kills you. Pass me a pancake, mandrake. Having a derby. Looking the mandel. Everybody eats when they come to my house. Hannah!
Now that we've established the large-scale structure, I do want to talk about the one thing that is true about the internal structure of these verses, which is that the last 8 of these is often something rather different. And the something rather different can appear every time, or it can appear only in the A verses, or only in the B verses. Sometimes this is a repeat, this is one particular phrase, which will be repeated at the end of each of these. Sometimes it'll be a break. And it's very useful knowing this rule. Partly, whenever you're dancing in this kind of music, you've got 3 pretty normal, quiet, nothing flashy going on 8s. But be prepared for something which can invite flashy dancing to be going on in this last 8, or for that matter a break where you'd look a bit of a fool if you're still moving quickly as if nothing happened. You'll have to get through the first 8 before you know something's happening, so you'll be listening out for it. But once you know it does happen on an A, for example, you'll realise it should happen on every A. If you get through the A's without something happening, when you're on the B's, you need to have your ears cocked for something possibly happening down here, And if it does, then you'll know every time you come to a B, when this whole refrain repeats later in the song, you can expect it. So now we'll go back to dancing again, and we'll explore different types of these structures on the last 8 of each of these groups of 4/8s. Okay, so let's start with what I think is the most common form, which is for the A's they always have a sort of special last 8, but for the A's not to have a heavy break, but for the B to have a very strong break. You've already heard this music once, but now you'll understand more about its structure. So again, dance along, but try to do something which clearly marks the break in the music that's going to appear at the end of the B. Here goes.
Goody, I want to lay some
I'll
high
count
time
you
on
into
you.
the first
Lay it down
A.
on me, Johnny. All right, you got your hip dictionary with you? I got my boots.
1,
Now get this footnote.
5, 6, 7,
A trickster
8.
tripped when he hopped. He should have flipped when he flopped. He wasn't hip to the proper jive when he made his dive. He
Next
should have
A.
flipped when he flopped before he chipped off his block. The dizzy trip made a drop through space. Then he lost his face.
You're expecting the B?
Now the fall didn't hurt him when he flew its top, but a small little matter like a sudden stop when he flipped his lid, slipped and slid. Whack! Oh, his aching back. The things he said no one knows, but he's afraid to report. 'Cause from his head to his toes he's whipped. Should have flipped when he flopped.
So hopefully that worked out for you. You heard the A's and were dancing along to them. When we went to the B, because I'd warned you there would be a break on the end of the B, you danced your 3/8s and then you hit the break. I did that to hit it in a really visually obvious way. You could have done anything. Just the point is, did you spot it? That was an example of what I'd call a fairly hard break, a fairly dramatic one, when he was sort of saying, something like, and whack, his poor old back, or whatever it was, when that he should have flipped when he flopped lyric was being explained. Sometimes the breaks are gentler, but you're still aware of them. So you probably wouldn't want to do a kind of dramatic freeze, or that one that I often do when we're teaching. But you may still want to do something else, like instead of doing all of this stuff, just a little, little shuffly, 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 small thing. Or if you do freeze your body, you may want to do something like pecs, or something to keep a bit of motion going, because it's not a really hard break. Again, the break is going to come in the last 8 of the B. Quite fast. 6, 7, 8.
It's a lonely tune. You can swing it too. You can chime in on the jive, jive, jive. It's a simple riff, ooh, with an easy lift. That's the rhythm of the jive, jive, jive. You have to dig this tempo. Ooh, don't let it get slow. Beat on out on that jive, Joe. Start to jive again. Now you got the stride. Ooh, you can really ride. That's the secret of the jive, jive, jive.
Good, so that was a lot faster, and if you were dancing a style other than shag, you may have found that particularly fast. Shag can go to reasonably fast music with ease. But hopefully again you heard 2 things in there. You heard at the end of the A's, the last 8 was something different. It wasn't breakish, but it was a bit different. The first 3/8s were all that boo-ah, boo-ah stuff, and then there was an actual sentence about the rhythm of the jive in the last 8 of the A's. And there was something much more break-like at the end of the B, but it wasn't an absolute stop, I think, which is why I just sort of did a shuffly thing as I'd suggested. Again, what we're actually dancing to these while we practice isn't very important. The point of this exercise is to start hearing the structure of the music and to start making yourself ready for what is likely to happen in the music. When all of that becomes second nature, you'll have more mental space to think about the really interesting sort of move that will happen. And of course, when we're dancing with partners, there'll also be the whole business about giving your partner the chance to do that as well. Those were 2 examples that broke on the B. I'm now going to play one that breaks on the A. Again, dance along and see if you can do something to acknowledge the break. 6, 7, 8.
Pennsylvania 65000. Pennsylvania 65000.
So hopefully that was clear. In this particular case, there wasn't very much in the way of lyrics in the piece as a whole. We had music, 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 and then we had the lyric, Pennsylvania 65000. Somebody answering the telephone. That number is the telephone number, or was the telephone number of the hotel at the Grand Central Station in New York, run by the Pennsylvania Railroad Company. And that's why I was doing, I knew it would be somebody answering the phone, so I was actually doing a kind of phone gesture when I did the break. You wouldn't necessarily have known about the phone stuff, but hopefully you did something in the break that made that different. And you noticed that break was on the A's, it wasn't on the B. And we went through that whole refrain of AABA. Let me play another one with the same kind of structure. 5, 6, 7, 8.
Gee, you look so fine. Gee, you should be mine. Gee, oh, how I find. Gee, you sure are fine. Gee, like cherry pie. Gee, I hope to die. Gee, and that's no lie. Sure look good to me. My goodness gracious. You thrill me bodacious. You're my admiration. Like a swinging king when it starts to swing. Gee, what's the matter with me? Gee, I'm in love with you, see. Gee, can't we agree? For 1, 2, 3, for you and me.
Good. Hopefully you spotted all of that. You did something for the breaks. I was varying what I did. Sometimes it was a hardish break. Sometimes it was just a different business, like the Rubber Legs, which we borrowed from the Killer Boogie shag stroll that we did in the last semester. So far we've covered, well, pieces that don't break at all, the Everybody Eats didn't. Pieces that break on the B's. Pieces that break on the A's. Sometimes there will be a break on both the A's and the B's. So the fact that you know you found it on the A's does not tell you it's not there on the B's. Let me play 2 examples like that. Please join in to dance and spot them. Nice and slow. 1,
I'm just a baby in this business of love.
7, 8.
On my move, I shake it like Mac and I could take your last dollar with the throw of the dice. I got a gift for women from heaven above. But I'm just a baby in this business of love. I'm a smooth operator in all affairs. Sophisticated, debonair of your own kind. Fancy stuff. I'm just a baby in this business of love. I'm just a baby. Nobody ever trained me. Somebody trained me. I'm just a baby in this business of love. And pursue the satisfaction. I started young. I never look back at the things I've done. I turn my back for pleasure at you and all. But nothing can save you from your own heart.
Good, and let's go on to one more piece with a similar structure.
Are you ready? Yes, we're ready. Jump in steady. You look solid, Joe. All I want to know, are you all right? Yes, we're all right. You can get it. Can we get it? If you said it. Yes, we said it, Joe. Come on, let me go. All I want to know, are you all right? Yes, we're all right. I'm like a tree, I'm all root. Hep to the jep, what it's all about. Stash like a top, don't miss a stop. I dig my kicks from the groovy lot. Are you really? Trilly, trilly. I
don't go Navajo. Come and let me know. Are you all read?
Now, you'll have noticed the interesting thing about that one is it didn't really break for the entire last 8. The first few beats of the 8 were setting it up for a break. So what I was typically doing was something like flick, flick, down, break, rather than just going straight into the break. Musicians are allowed to do what they want to. As I said, there aren't very firm internal rules about structure in the ballad form. And typically what might have happened if I were dancing and I were hearing that for the very first time, partner dancing, whatever, towards the end of the third 8 in the first A, and I'd be thinking, ooh, are the musicians going to do something interesting here? I'd hear the 8 starting and I'd be thinking, maybe not, and then they'd go into the break, and I'd probably be doing something slightly half-baked, just a kind of a busy dancing, and I'd just stop and think, oh, that was a bit half-baked, but now I know, so the next time they come to the end of an A, I will be ready for that. And we'll also keep thinking about, might they do it on the B as well? If they do something on the B as well, it may not be exactly the same as the A. I'm not trying to create confusion here, but what I am trying to do is to create the idea, as you're getting towards the end of the third of any of those 8s in any of the AA, BA structure things where you heard them for the first time, be ready for something exciting happening on the last 8. And once you've nailed what happens on the A, you'll know for the rest of the piece. Once you've nailed what happens on the first B, you'll know for the rest of the piece. There may be other sections parachuted into the piece, and I'm going to talk about that next week, but having got this general structure, you'll be set up for dancing in a much more musical way, and to your partner and to anybody watching, you'll much more clearly be dancing with the band, and actually to the band as well. When people are playing live music, they're watching dancers. And once they realise that dancers are following the band will start to interact. There's one well-known Edinburgh band that will sometimes reach one of the players, will reach a Swanee whistle and make ridiculous sounds, knowing that once the dancers have got the hang, they'll be doing the or whatever in their dance as the band person does the Swanee whistle. And there'll be all sorts of other silly things that happen because the band members get excited to see the dancers are not just thinking, oh, this is a metronome just giving me beats. This is music. There is meaning here. I respond to it. And sometimes you'll find that the band people will look at one particular couple for a while and they will start responding to the couple. So as dancers, if the music isn't very syncopated and you suddenly start doing syncopated footwork, sometimes a band person will pick that up, and the next time, the end of the next verse, that band person will hit that syncopation for the dancers. There's this wonderful kind of communication that can happen, at least with bands who like dancers, and of course, mostly if you go to a dance or a live band, whoever organised it has invited a band that likes dancers. Okay, that's the end of this class. Because of the antics of Hamish, one particular song is firmly stuck in my head. So I'm going to splice onto the end of this a video. This is not Collegiate Shag, this is another dance. It's actually probably my favourite of all of the swing dances. It's called Balboa. It's a very close hold dance, and when we can teach live again, I'm really looking forward to teaching this again. And this is some dance happening to the Rubber Ducky song, and to emphasise what a small, compact dance it is, it will include people dancing in a shower. But please don't worry, there is nothing unsafe for work in this. It won't go to where you think it will. Honestly, you can show this video anywhere, it's fine. Okay, I hope you have a good week. I shall look forward to seeing you next week for the last of this music-themed series, when I'll deal with structures that don't exactly fit the 12-bar or the 8-bar, but are either hybrids of the two, or deliberate vandalisms of one of them, or right at the end I'll cover some crazily different structures which are not suitable for normal swing dance, but which some DJs who are not actually dancers might actually put on, so it's worth your spotting them and realising this is one to sit out. Okay, bye for now.
Ducky, you're the one. You make bad times so much fun. Rubber Ducky, I'm awfully fond of you. Rubber Ducky, joy of joys. When I squeeze you, you make noise. Rubber Ducky, you're my very best friend, it's true. Every day when I make my way to the tubby, I meet a fella who's cute and yellow and chubby. Do-ba-ba-ba-ba. Rubber Ducky, you're so fine. I'm so lucky that you're mine. Rubber Ducky, I'm awfully fond of you. Rubber Ducky, you're the one. You make bad times so much fun. Rubber Ducky, I'm awfully fond of you. Rubber Ducky, joy of joys. When I squeeze you, you make noise. Rubber Ducky, you're my very best friend, it's true. Every day when I make my way to the tubby, meet a fella who's cute and yellow and chubby. You-ba-ba-ba-bo. Rubber Ducky, you're so fine. I'm so lucky that you're mine. Rubber Ducky, I'm awfully fond of. Rubber Ducky, I want a whole pond of. Rubber Ducky, you're my very best friend, it's true.